the Washington Post ran 16 negative stories about Bernie in 16 hours. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but neither are most of you. And according to my calculations, 16 divided by 16 is one hit piece an hour. Again, I'm not suggesting the media is a monolith, but when there are actual verifiable trends showing a difference in coverage between candidates, it's important to look at those trends and examine the frequent tropes that seem to dominate the media narrative and ask ourselves, why? So come on, guys, let's go on a media analysis journey and explore some of the fun tropes used in what I still like to call the 7 stages of Bernie grief. Hey there, corporate media company. My name is Dr. Mr. Cody, and I'm going to be your Bernie grief counselor. You've got a vested interest in pleasing your wealthy shareholders, and you've recently experienced a loss of status quo. Navigating these choppy waters of change can be a difficult transition, which you may experience in the form of the stages of Bernard grief, or as I like to also call it, the Bernie journey. Stage 1, denial. Ignoring Bernie and hoping that, like Tinkerbell's magic, he'll disappear if they don't believe. Also known as Bernie blindness, Bernie blackout, or the Bern spurn. Nobody calls it that last one. Now, you may go into denial over the fact that Bernie Sanders exists. This can be a natural response to being frightened by Bernie's radical ideas, such as people shouldn't die because they can't afford health care, and maybe we should somewhat improve things for people who aren't Jeff Bezos. Ugh. It's terrifying. Often our response to something scary and new is just to ignore it, like accidentally leaving Bernie's name off of a poll while remembering to include other. Or how Fox News reported that Biden rebounds, Warren falls to third. So Biden's on first, Warren's on third, who's on second? Get it? It's the old who's on second joke, except it's about how Fox refuses to mention Sanders because they're very, very scared. Other channels and publications might exclude him from headlines or graphics. Sometimes they'll put him in third, even if the numbers on screen put him in second. Sometimes the numbers will just be wrong, like they do not match the poll they're reporting on. I mean, surely, though, these are just mistakes. It's not like they happen on a regular basis. And yep, let's play the clip that ironically undermines what I just said. Roll that part. Anyway, stage 2, claim he's unelectable. So first, the corporate media try to pretend that they and their audience, who they think is stupid, don't understand object impermanence, and if you can't see Bernie, he doesn't exist. Well, that didn't exactly work. So, all right, Bernie exists. He's not just a story your parents tell you to try to get you to clean your room so the Bernie man won't come and make you share your toys with other kids. And people seem to like him, so we need to talk about him. Sure, but he's unelectable. And you shouldn't vote for him because nobody will vote for him. A line of logic that you know it's curved and the ends meet. Like a circle is what the logic is like. But it's worth asking, you know? I mean, is he electable? Maybe he's not electable. I'm like, what? What if you and a bunch of people accidentally vote for someone who's unelectable? Now, you might be asking, what does electability even mean? Well, obviously, electability means your ability to be elected, which we can measure by whether you get elected to the position we're electing someone to. So if someone's electable, they've been elected in the future, in theory. But we can tell if someone's electable now by saying in the future they'll be elected, because we go, hey, that candidate looks like someone who could in the future get elected, right? Yeah. So okay. So how do you measure electability? Is it the number of people who donate to your campaign, or votes? You know, votes for the person. The next best thing is polls, right? Polls. Maybe we use polls. Polls show that Bernard is unelectable. I mean, Bernie seems pretty unelectable, right? So he must be tanking in the polls. Oh. Okay, well, what are polls anyway? Just a bunch of lines on paper. How do you even define a poll? I mean, this CNN poll back in January said that Joe Biden had a whopping 20% support, and Bernie Sanders behind him with only 20% support. Who's to say which 20% is better? Joe Biden, the guy who's electable because we said so, or this Bernard fellow who is unelectable with his measly 20%? But okay, all right, maybe Bernie was tied with Biden, but just barely. Here's CNN again, this time showing that Bernie has joined Biden atop the Democratic presidential pack, this time barely squeaking in a 27% tie with Biden's girthy 24%. Okay, wait. Okay, so CNN. So before, Biden was leading Bernie with his 20% versus Bernie's 20%. Now you suddenly care about margins of sampling errors when comparing Bernie's 27% to Biden's 24%. That's weird. I wonder why something like this would happen a lot. You know what? Never mind. All right. I almost got carried away there and got all irrationally emotional about statistical consistency and how the lack of it always seems to go against one specific person that threatens the corporate media and the status quo. But look, just because Bernie is ahead in the polls amongst his primary opponents and in matchups against Donald Trump doesn't make him electable. Even if we elect him to be our nominee, that still doesn't mean he's electable. In this article, the writer contends that we just don't know if Sanders is electable, given that he hasn't actually faced public scrutiny. The writer says the real oppo dump hasn't happened yet. An oppo dump not being how you have to go to the bathroom after eating at Joke Restaurant, but the dumping of opposition research. The writer, Paul Waldman, argues that Bernie simply hasn't been tested yet. Quote, in the scope of what we'll soon be seeing, that's a mere oppo appetizer. He says, ironically, while offering us a full meal of said oppo dumps by making the totally neutral meta pearl-clutching commentary that some people might imply that Sanders has a long history as not just as a man of the left, but a radical, one whose ideas are so outrageous that the general electorate could not possibly support him. I mean, it's not that Paul is saying that, you guys. It's just that Paul is saying that people might say that, and that might make Bernie unelectable. You know, if people said that. Related to this, there's so much concern about how Bernie hasn't been vetted yet. He's gotten a free ride from the media, who loves him. The real shit about him, that's on its way. Except, according to this piece in the New Republic, this has been said about Bernie since 2015. A mix of he's not vetted and constant vetting. But beyond the idea that Bernie hasn't been tested, even though he's been in politics for decades and in the national eye for at least years, is that electability is a hard to define but definitely real thing, one that you, a voter, may not understand, but a smart news person can definitely tell you about. It's certainly not something I'll wield in a capricious manner, warning that candidates I don't like are unelectable, while throwing out the very concept of electability when it doesn't favor the candidate that I do like. I would never do that. Oop. Yeah, there it is. Remember that Washington Post writer, Paul Waldman, we talked about 30 seconds ago, who was worrying about whether Bernie was electable? Well, that wasn't his opinion 5 months ago when he warned people not to get caught up in the whole electability argument. After all, his apparently preferred candidate, Elizabeth Warren, who he says was generating the most passionate excitement, wasn't doing well in the polls. And he writes something that's actually pretty profound. What follows are a bunch of quotes from voters attesting to how much they love Warren, but worry that other people might not like her. And so we witness the vicious cycle of electability, one almost immune to facts and experience, in which both savvy journalists and ordinary voters convince themselves that general elections are won by candidates who don't turn off the mythical average voter, achieving that majority appeal that can be heard when the electorate cries as one, "He's okay, I guess. I mean, could be worse." Hey, Paul Waldman, That's actually a really good point.